Before starting the story, I would like to say that 99% of you are not subscribers, while only 1% are. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories for you. Subscribe now.
In the vast expanse of the galaxy, the Interstellar Alliance governed peace among numerous planets and species. Amidst its diplomats, Vexara of the Seraphon was renowned for her dedication and her vehement disdain for humans. The Seraphon, a highly advanced and elegant species with translucent wings and bioluminescent skin, valued intelligence and culture above all else. To Vexara, humans were crude, impulsive, and barbaric. Vexara had spent years studying human history and behavior, finding their wars and environmental destruction abhorrent. Her mission was to foster peaceful relations, yet her personal bias often clouded her judgment. She had never met a human who could change her mind until she was assigned to Earth as the lead diplomat to negotiate a critical treaty. The moment Vexara's ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, she was struck by the planet's chaotic beauty. The sprawling cities with their towering skyscrapers contrasted sharply with the lush, untamed wilderness that still covered large swathes of the planet. The Earth's unique blend of natural beauty and industrial prowess was a sensory overload for the Seraphon diplomat, accustomed to the serene and harmonious landscapes of her homeworld. Upon landing, Vexara was met by a delegation of human officials, their expressions a mix of curiosity and formality. Leading them was Daniel Lawson, a seasoned diplomat known for his charm and eloquence. Tall and impeccably dressed, he exuded a calm confidence that immediately set him apart. "Ambassador Vexara," Daniel greeted with a respectful nod, his voice warm. "Welcome to Earth. It's an honor to have you here." Vexara inclined her head, her expression cool. "Thank you, Ambassador Lawson. I trust we can proceed with the negotiations without delay." "Of course," Daniel replied, his smile unwavering. "But first, allow us to extend our hospitality. A tour of the city might provide a better context for our discussions." Reluctantly, Vexara agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to understand the human environment better. As their hovercar weaved through the bustling streets of the city, Vexara observed the eclectic mix of architecture, from ancient historical buildings to futuristic skyscrapers. The streets were alive with people of all ages and backgrounds, their lives intertwining in a dance of activity. Daniel pointed out various landmarks, sharing tidbits of history and culture. "That building there," he said, gesturing to a grand structure, "is the Earth Parliament. It's where representatives from all over the planet come together to make decisions." Vexara listened, her skepticism still intact. "Your political system seems complicated. How do you achieve consensus with so many differing opinions?" Daniel chuckled. "It's not always easy, I admit. But our diversity is also our strength. Different perspectives lead to innovative solutions." The tour continued, and Daniel took Vexara to a cultural center showcasing human art and music. As they walked through the gallery, Vexara found herself reluctantly impressed by the creativity and emotional depth of the artworks. One piece, a vivid painting of a serene landscape under a starry sky, caught her attention. "This painting," Daniel said, noticing her interest, "was inspired by the stories of our ancestors, dreaming of the stars long before we ever reached them." Vexara studied the painting, feeling a connection she hadn't expected. "It's beautiful," she admitted, her voice softening. Daniel smiled. "Art transcends boundaries. It's a universal language." Despite her growing appreciation for human culture, Vexara remained guarded. She couldn't forget the horrors she had read about, the wars, the environmental destruction, the societal inequalities. But as the days turned into weeks, Daniel's persistent efforts to bridge the cultural gap began to wear down her defenses. During their negotiations, Vexara and Daniel spent long hours in conference rooms, often clashing over terms and conditions. Yet outside those formal settings, Daniel continued to share the human experience with her. He took her to historical sites, introduced her to human cuisine, and even taught her to play a popular Earth game. Each experience added a layer to her understanding, challenging her preconceived notions. One evening, after an especially heated debate, Daniel invited Vexara to a quiet dinner away from the prying eyes of the media and other diplomats. Reluctantly, she agreed, seeing it as another opportunity to understand human behavior outside the confines of formal settings. Daniel took her to a serene lakeside restaurant where the ambiance was peaceful, and the food was a mix of different Earth cuisines. As they dined, they spoke not as diplomats, but as individuals. Daniel shared stories of his childhood, his dreams, and his fears. Vexara, in turn, spoke of the beauty of Seraphon, her people's achievements, and her personal journey as a diplomat. As the night wore on, they discovered common ground in their dedication to their respective duties and their shared desire for a peaceful galaxy. Daniel's sincerity and vulnerability touched Vexara in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time, she saw beyond the human stereotypes she had held for so long. The turning point came when Daniel took Vexara to a human art exhibition. There, surrounded by paintings and sculptures that depicted the spectrum of human emotions and experiences, Vexara felt a profound connection. One painting in particular caught her eye, a depiction of a serene alien landscape that reminded her of home. The artist, Daniel explained, had created it inspired by stories of other worlds. Moved by the realization that humans too could appreciate and create beauty beyond their own experiences, Vexara felt her heart soften. The barriers she had built around herself began to crumble. That night, as they walked back to her quarters, Vexara looked at Daniel with new eyes, seeing not just a human but a kindred spirit. The negotiations were grueling. Vexara and Daniel spent long hours in conference rooms, hashing out terms and conditions, their discussions often heated. The treaty they were working on was critical, aiming to establish a lasting peace and cooperative relationship between Seraphon and Earth. Both diplomats felt the weight of their responsibilities heavily on their shoulders. Despite their professional rapport, Vexara remained cautious. Her growing respect for Daniel conflicted with her deep-seated prejudices. She found herself torn between her duty and the unexpected emotions that were surfacing. Daniel, sensing Vexara's internal struggle, continued his efforts to bridge the cultural and emotional gap between them. One evening, after an especially tense negotiation session, Daniel approached Vexara with an idea. "Vexara, how about a break from all this? Let's take a step back and try to understand each other's worlds better. I know a place that might help clear our minds." Vexara hesitated, but finally agreed. "All right, Daniel, I trust your judgment." Daniel led her to a quiet, secluded spot outside the city, a serene lakeside retreat surrounded by lush greenery and blooming flowers. The air was filled with the soothing sounds of nature, a stark contrast to the bustling city and the intense atmosphere of the negotiation rooms. As they walked along the lakeside, Daniel began to share more personal stories. "This place reminds me of my childhood. My family used to come here every summer. It's where I first learned to appreciate the beauty of nature and the importance of preserving it." Vexara listened, her curiosity piqued. "It's beautiful here. I can see why it holds such a special place in your heart." They sat on a bench overlooking the water, the setting sun casting a golden hue over the lake. Daniel turned to Vexara, his expression earnest. "Vexara, I know you have reservations about humans, and I can understand why. Our history is far from perfect, but I believe that through understanding and cooperation, we can create a better future for both our species." Vexara looked into Daniel's eyes, seeing the sincerity and hope reflected in them. "You speak of hope and cooperation, but how can I trust that humans won't revert to their destructive ways?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Change takes time, and it starts with individuals. We have the power to influence our societies, to promote peace and understanding. Look at us. We've already made significant progress in these negotiations. That's because we've taken the time to understand each other, to see beyond our differences." Vexara considered his words, feeling the truth in them. "You're right, Daniel. Change does start with individuals, and perhaps, by working together, we can inspire that change on a larger scale." Their conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. Vexara began to see Daniel not just as a human diplomat, but as a friend and an ally. She appreciated his openness and his willingness to acknowledge the flaws of his species while striving for a better future. Her feelings of respect deepened, and she found herself drawn to his kindness and optimism. As they continued their walk, Daniel guided Vexara to a small art gallery by the lake. The gallery was hosting an exhibition featuring works from various cultures, including some inspired by the Seraphon. Vexara was moved by the human artists' interpretations of her world, their art capturing the essence of Seraphon's beauty and elegance. One piece in particular caught her eye, a sculpture of a Seraphon dancer, wings outstretched, bathed in soft bioluminescent light. The artist had managed to capture the grace and fluidity of Seraphon movements, something Vexara thought humans could never truly understand. "This is remarkable," Vexara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "How did they manage to capture this so accurately?" Daniel smiled. "Art has a way of transcending boundaries. It's a language that speaks to the soul, no matter where you're from. This artist spent years studying Seraphon culture, striving to understand and appreciate its beauty." Vexara felt a deep sense of connection to the sculpture, and by extension to the artist who had created it. She realized that humans were capable of understanding and appreciating her world in ways she hadn't imagined. This revelation further softened her heart, breaking down the remaining barriers she had built around herself. As the evening drew to a close, Vexara and Daniel sat by the lake once more, the moonlight reflecting off the water. "Thank you, Daniel," Vexara said softly. "You've shown me a side of humanity I never knew existed. I'm starting to see the potential for a true partnership between our worlds." Daniel reached out and gently took her hand. "I'm glad to hear that, Vexara. Together, we can build a future where our species coexist in harmony." In that moment, surrounded by the tranquil beauty of nature and the shared understanding they had cultivated, Vexara felt a warmth spread through her, a feeling she had never experienced before. She realized she was beginning to care deeply for Daniel, not just as a diplomat, but as a person. It was a feeling she couldn't ignore, and it filled her with both hope and apprehension for what lay ahead. The final days of the negotiations were tense. Both sides had made significant concessions, but a few critical points remained unresolved. Vexara and Daniel worked tirelessly, fueled by their newfound understanding and respect for each other. Despite the mounting pressure, they drew strength from the bond they had formed, their collaboration becoming seamless and more effective. One evening, after a particularly challenging session, Daniel found Vexara alone in the embassy garden, gazing up at the stars. He approached her quietly, his presence comforting and familiar. "Vexara," he said softly, "you look like you have the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders." She turned to him, her bioluminescent skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. "It's just, there's so much at stake. I fear that one wrong move could unravel everything we've worked for." Daniel stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the same determination she felt. "We're almost there. I believe in what we're doing, and I believe in us. Together, we can make this work." Vexara smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. "You've taught me so much, Daniel. Not just about humans, but about hope and perseverance. I never imagined I would say this, but I'm glad we were paired for this mission." He smiled back, his heart swelling with affection. "Me too, Vexara. You've shown me that despite our differences, we're not so different after all. We both want the same thing: peace, understanding, and a better future." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the barriers between their worlds seemed to dissolve. Vexara felt a deep connection to Daniel, a bond that transcended species and backgrounds. It was a realization that both thrilled and terrified her. She had fallen in love with a human. The next few days were a blur of meetings and intense discussions. With each passing hour, Vexara and Daniel grew more attuned to each other, their teamwork impeccable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached an agreement on the remaining points. The treaty was ready. The signing ceremony was a grand affair, attended by leaders and dignitaries from across the galaxy. The media buzzed with excitement, capturing every moment as Vexara and Daniel took their places at the signing table. As they signed the document, sealing the historic agreement, the room erupted in applause. The treaty promised a new era of cooperation and understanding between Seraphon and Earth, a future built on the foundation they had laid. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, Vexara and Daniel found a quiet moment to themselves. The weight of their accomplishment settled over them, and they shared a look of mutual pride and relief. "We did it," Vexara said, her voice filled with wonder. Daniel nodded, his eyes shining. "We did, and it's just the beginning." They walked together to the garden where they had shared so many conversations, their hearts light with the promise of the future. As they sat down on a bench, Daniel took Vexara's hand in his touch gentle and reassuring. "Vexara," he began, his voice earnest, "I know this is new and unexpected for both of us, but I care about you deeply. You've become more than just a colleague or a friend. You've become someone I can't imagine my life without." Vexara felt her heart race, her emotions a whirlwind of joy and uncertainty. "Daniel, I feel the same way. This connection between us, .. something I never thought possible. But it's real, and it's powerful." Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with love. "Then let's embrace it, Vexara. Whatever challenges we face, we'll face them together." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the garden and the promise of a new era, Vexara felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had never known. She leaned in, her wings shimmering softly in the moonlight, and kissed Daniel, their worlds colliding in a beautiful harmony. Their love, born out of understanding and respect, became a symbol of what was possible when different worlds came together. Vexara's journey from hatred to love showed that even the deepest prejudices could be overcome. In doing so, she discovered a love that transcended the stars, a bond that would guide them both toward a brighter future. As the night sky stretched out above them, filled with endless possibilities, Vexara and Daniel knew that their story was just beginning. Together they would continue to build bridges, not just between their worlds, but in the hearts of those they touched. And in that unity, they found a love that was truly out of this world.